Good morning, America. My name is Michael Evans, and you're listening to America's Voice Now. Thank you for joining with us this morning. We have a special guest who will be joining us shortly. Her name is Marjorie Wildcraft, and she is a world-renowned author, creator of an entire teaching series on gardening called Grow Your Own Groceries. She has a website and a Facebook page and a site that will help you to find and obtain her outstanding program. She's created a multiple DVD set on basically turning your backyard into an organic food-producing paradise. She'll be joining with us later on this morning. You can find her website at growyourowngroceries.com and also marjoriewildcraft.com. For our bullet points this morning, I'd like to mention the issue surrounding the unbelievable step that is being taken by the Eurozone. The announcement today by a Eurozone official is that essentially what's happened in Cyprus can also be replicated in Spain, Italy, and other European countries whose funds and private citizen currency or bank accounts will be raided, if needed, to preserve Europe's single currency and prop up failing banks. Ladies and gentlemen, the official announcement, the slide has begun. What this tells us is that bankers across the world, governments across the world, working hand in hand with bankers, feel that it is acceptable to plunder your money, your savings, your funds. Were that an individual, that would be classified as theft. But under the guise of government, it's an acceptable policy. And you are merely collateral damage. I suggest that those of you who have significant levels of funding in banks, remove that, purchase hard assets that are tradable as commodities, and make sure that there's nothing there for them to steal. This will spread to the United States of America. It is not a Eurozone problem. It is a global problem because central banks across the world, including our own Federal Reserve, are inextricably linked. Our value and the value of the dollar is tied integrally to the value of the euro. That will not change. And if the euro slides and the Eurozone falls into dissolution, the United States currency is in dire danger. We do have what is currently known as the world's founding currency. However, the petrodollar, which is really what the United States props its dollar up by, is only good as long as the other currencies hold some semblance of value. The only reason that the dollar has not collapsed and is not in the current status of the euro is simply this. The petrodollar, which is the US dollar, is guaranteed to be solvent because the Middle Eastern countries who provide fuel in the form of oil have assured the United States of America via a joint agreement that the U.S. dollar will be the foundational currency for all oil transactions. That means whether you come to the OPEC countries with rubles, or whether you come with lira, or you come with reals, or whatever other currency you come with, the yuan, the yen, makes no difference. You must translate that, or you must convert that to the U.S. dollar in order to purchase oil. In the event the Middle East were to pull that rug out from underneath the U.S. dollar, it would collapse like a house of cards. Why? Well, because it's overinflated, and because the full faith and credit of the United States is universally now known as worthless. So watch out. Keep your eyes on the Eurozone. Keep your eyes on Europe. Keep your eyes on the Euro. And keep your eyes and your ears tuned for what these Eurozone officials have to say. Read between the lines. Be smart. Be cautious. And be wise. I strongly encourage you, if you do have large amounts of money in a bank, that you withdraw that money, and I don't care whether you stuff it in your mattress, although I think that's foolish, or you buy commodities such as silver. But you better do it soon, because the price of silver and gold are going to jump. Mark my words, you're going to see commodity prices rise immediately based upon this threat from the Eurozone. Don't buy at the peak of the market. And I'm not going to make any recommendations or suggestions on where or how or what. Just know that hardened currency in the form of precious metals and or items which you can actually use to provide for yourselves and your family will be the next currency. Okay. That is the end of my bullet points. We are going to be joined by Marjorie Wildcraft shortly, but before that, I want to mention something that was brought out earlier in the morning show. There is a program tonight that's going to be held at the West Plains Civic Center, and I would strongly encourage anyone and everyone to go. There is a group from Missouri State University's premier all-male and all-female a cappella vocal groups. Now, they are called the Baretones, which is in league or concert with the mascot for the state university. And the gentleman, which is a all-baritone group, is called the Baretones. And the ladies are called a cappella. Kind of a play on words. I listened to a preview of a couple of the songs. It did sound to me like there was drums in the background. I was corrected that is actually not drums. It is entirely vocal. And I have to tell you, if you want to have an opportunity, I'm going tonight. And I'm not only going, but I'm dragging my entire family with me, kicking, screaming, or otherwise. I've already notified them that there was nothing that will stand in the way of tonight's performance and that they should appear. There's no charge, and I strongly encourage you to do the same. Make sure that you gather your family tonight, even if you have to tell them that tonight is a surprise, and just make sure that you appear. Doors open at 6:30, performance is at 7, cost is $0. There will be a film shown afterwards. I've forgotten the name of the film, but it doesn't really matter, because frankly, I'm going to hear the music. And I would encourage you to do the same. So if you have an opportunity to make sure that the name of the movie is Pitch Perfect. If you have an opportunity to go tonight, I would really encourage you to do that. This is an outstanding musical opportunity for you to put a little bit or inject a little bit of pure goodness into your life and that of your family. So make sure, if you have a chance tonight, that you come down to the West Plains Civic Center. The doors open at 6:30, performance is at 7, and this will be tonight at the West Plains Civic Center Theater. All right. Quick note before we have our break, and that is that we do have our reloading class coming up this Saturday. If you have not made plans to be there, I need to hear from you immediately in order to know exactly how many folks are going to be showing up. Please send me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org if you're planning on attending. And also, our tactical pistol class has been moved to April 6th and 7th. And if you would like to attend that, please make sure that you send me a notification via email also. You can reach me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. Please make sure that you contact me immediately if you plan to attend either of those events, as seats are moving quickly, and especially this Saturday for the reloading class, I need to know exactly how many folks are going to be appearing. We're going to take a break, and when we return, we will bring on Ms. Wildcraft, and I think you folks will find her program and her websites to be informative and educational. We'll be back in just a moment.
They say that people actually suffer from anxiety if they don't know where their cell phone is. And you know what they call it now? Are you ready? Nomophobia. There are other phobias like boobtubophobia. That's when you're afraid of missing Judge Judy. Okay, the worst of all is commandophobia.
Saturdays noon to 3 for the Kim Commando Show, and weekdays at 7:20 for your digital minute. That's Kim Commando on the Ozarks Best News Talk.
There is this product on Amazon that is simply going crazy. The banana slicer, almost 2,500 consumer reviews. I've been trying to come up with an ideal way to slice a banana. Use a knife, they say. Well, my parole officer won't let me around knives. Or how about this one? What can I say about the banana slicer that hasn't already been said about the wheel or penicillin? Obviously, just a pure hoax.
Saturdays noon to 3 and weekdays at 7:35 for your digital minute. It's Kim Commando on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1.
All right, we are returning. Appreciate your spending your time with us this morning. We value your time, and our goal is to try to help keep you informed and educated so that you understand what's going on in the world around you. We are slated to have a discussion with Ms. Wildcraft this morning. She should be joining us shortly, and when she does, I will alert you immediately. There are a lot of issues that are going on around the significance of this banking scandal and the fact that the mask is beginning to fall off of our banking system. For those of you who are not familiar with where we are, I should remind you that we are currently in the process of buying back our own debt. What that means is that we are actually shill bidding our own debt. Now, the Federal Reserve calls this quantitative easing. That is a euphemism for shill bidding and monetization of the debt. If you're not familiar or understanding of what that is, just simply imagine it this way. Your debt is up for sale at an auction. You simply go out there, and you're sitting in the audience, and you have your brother or your husband or your wife or your sister sit in the audience and bid on your debt as well. That person buys your debt, and it looks as if that debt has value. In fact, you're insolvent. That's the reality, folks. We're buying our own debt with money which we print. Now imagine your sister or your father or your brother or whomever is your shill bidder goes up and pays for your debt with money which you made on a photocopy machine. Now you have the true picture. Here's the problem. When you buy your own debt, the purpose of that is basically to, well, first of all, recognize that the rest of the world is not necessarily willing to pay and buy your debt for what they had been in the past. And the reason for that is because it looks day by day as if you are becoming more and more insolvent. And so essentially what happens is as the audience begins to thin and there are less bidders, you step up and begin to bid on your own debt. The idea is to make it look like it's worth more. In reality, the world is stepping away from the United States as an investment and a credit risk. Why? Well, we have $17 trillion in known, visible debt. We have unfunded liabilities that far exceed that. We have a series of investment vehicles out there which, to anyone in the banking world, are well known to be absolutely worthless. Derivatives, credit swaps, commercial loans, they are worthless, and yet they amount to $80 trillion. That's right. $80 trillion. We, as taxpayers, are on the hook. Why are we on the hook? Well, because the organizations that have created that have made sure that we are on the hook. Our government has ensured that we will be the primary guarantor of that debt. So we are on the hook for $80 trillion in derivatives and credit swaps that the banks have gambled upon, taken the profits, and essentially stepped away from. We owe $16.7 trillion. Let's call it $17 trillion. That's what it is. And there's no sign of stopping. In addition to that, we owe an additional $123 trillion in unfunded liabilities and an additional $80 trillion in guaranteed investment products. So do the math. That's roughly $225 trillion. Now, what you have to recognize is, well, you say $225 trillion, that's really not that much. Well, it is when you recognize that the entire basis for all of our national assets, all together, including personal, corporate, and business assets, is only worth $93 trillion. Whoops, wait a second, that can't be right, you say. Oh, it is. Our entire government, our entire nation, all of our combined assets, small business, corporate assets, household assets, worth roughly $93 trillion. Our total liabilities, at least those that are visible, $225 trillion. What does that tell you? Well, that tells us that we have a liability that exceeds our asset value. In other words, our net worth is upside down by roughly $750,000 per person. That means that if you were to have to pay your share, you would have to produce $750,000 in order just to cover your debt. $750,000. That's not counting you eating. That's not counting you paying your mortgage. That's not counting you paying for your child to go to school. That's not paying your insurance bill or your electric bill or your heat bill. You are responsible for $750,000. And that's assuming, by the way, that we absorb all of the national assets to help pay the debt. In other words, if we had a fire sale and sold the entire nation, we would still have a $750,000 per taxpayer debt. So we would be bankrupt, without a home, without food, shelter, or clothing, sleeping in a refrigerator box on a foreigner's land, and we would still owe $750,000. Get the picture? Consider yourself sleeping in a refrigerator box, no food, no clothing, no job, no possessions of any kind, and in debt for $750,000. Hello? That's where your alleged leaders have delivered you. Each taxpayer is responsible just right now, just for our national debt, for $148,000. Just for the $16.8 trillion we owe. Okay? That's not counting the unfunded liabilities of the other $200 trillion we owe. Holy smoke, you say. That's right. We owe, per taxpayer, $148,000 just to pay the debt. The $17 trillion we owe. That's not counting the other 123 plus the other 80. Are you starting to get the picture here? The debt per citizen to cover just the $16.7 trillion, the majority of which, $6.7 trillion of it, has been engendered by the tyrant Obama, who would like to be king, is $53,000 per citizen. So your child who was born yesterday was born into debt to the tune of $53,000. $53,000. Your toddler who's running around playing with Lincoln Logs or Barbie dolls currently owes $53,000 as his or her share of our debt. No. Not that debt for Social Security and prescription drugs and Medicare. Not that debt. Not the debt for derivatives and not the debt for the other investment vehicles. Just the $16.7 trillion we currently owe. Little Bobby and little Sally are responsible for $53,000 of that. If we tack on the remainder, well, you get the picture. The U.S. population is currently about 315 million people, of which only about 115 million actually are taxpayers. Wow. You mean only a third of us are paying taxes? Uh-huh. Because you have to take out the children and the helpless and the hapless, and those who, well, for all intents and purposes, don't pay taxes because it's all street cash. And that includes thugs from the corner drug stop all the way up to the highest pillars of power at IBM and GE and Microsoft, and, well, you get the idea. The actual total number of unemployed people is 23 million. 23 million. The government says it's really not that high, it's only 12 million. But they've let those who fall off, they let those who claim that they cannot find a job or have gone for a certain period of time without having found a job, they let them fall off the record. They don't count anymore. But they're still out there. What you don't realize is that there are roughly 23 million also who are federal and state and local government employees. That's right. 23 million employees in government alone. Now, if you compare that to the total number of taxpayers, of which there are 113, you basically come up with the fact that there's about 25% of the entire taxpayer base who works directly for government. We're going to take a break. When we return, we're going to go through some more of these numbers because they are truly frightening indeed. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio. I'm Chris Foster. Today, the Supreme Court considers California's gay marriage ban.
Lower courts have ruled the state's Proposition 8 is unconstitutional, and opponents of the law want the court to pave the way for a 50-state solution and block similar bans in other states. Supporters argue the voter-approved measure is not discrimination because same-sex marriage, they say, is different.
Fox News Radio's Jared Halpern at the Supreme Court, where tomorrow it's arguments about a New York lesbian forced to pay federal taxes on her wife's estate. Italy's highest criminal court orders a new trial for Amanda Knox, the American convicted then acquitted of killing her roommate.
The Supreme Court fully embraced the prosecution's 14 objections to the 2011 acquittal. The lawyer for the family of the victim, 21-year-old Meredith Kircher, said that this was a victory for justice.
Fox News Radio's Courtney Walsh in Rome. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Get a hold of Brian down at Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance. You can call him at 870-492-4030, or you can find him on the web at ozarkmtnselfreliance.com. Located a half-mile east of Walmart on Route 62 in Mountain Home. My friends over at Chantilly's Artisan Bakery at 255-2253, number 2 Evans Arcade off the square in West Plains. Best damn bakery in 100 miles. You can reach Mary at 255-2253. My friend Bill Stone over at Stone Construction at 293-0116. Whether remodeling or doing new or custom construction or light commercial, Bill's the guy for you. 293-0116. West Plains Pawn and Gun, located on Route 160, just about a mile east of Walmart on the right-hand side. westplainspawn.com. You can also reach them by a telephone at 417-256-3000. Friends over at the battery station at 303 Washington Avenue, right off the square in West Plains. You can find them on the web at batterystation.com, and you can call them at 417-257-7799. Also, don't forget to stop by Pizza Hut for an outstanding lunch special between 11 and 2. Salad and pasta all together. You can also visit them on Tuesday evenings for family night. Kids eat free under 12. And Jason over at Wits End Classic Barbershop, the sponsor of our telephone line. Make sure that you see Wits End Classic Barbershop for your next shave and a haircut. Outstanding, fine young man, and a great patriot as well. He's on the square in West Plains.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt on the next Hugh Hewitt Show. Joe Kernan of CNBC Squawk Box joins me to talk about how long and how far this rally can go and whether or not Apple's ever going to get back on board, though they had a wonderful day on Friday. And I'll be joined by Congressman Tom Cotton, around whom considerable swirl continues to spin, because he might be running for the United States Senate.
Sundays from 6 till 7, following Money Talk with Bob Brinker, it's the Weekend Journal with Hugh Hewitt on the Ozark's Best News Talk 107.1.
News Talk 107.1 The Point weather sponsorships are available for your business marketing plans. Contact Cody or Josh at 255-2548 for more information.
From the Point Weather Center for this morning, a partly cloudy sky, mixed clouds and sun through the day with a high of 42. Mainly clear tonight, low 24. Tomorrow, partly sunny, high 48. Mostly cloudy skies Thursday, high 54. Clouds, maybe a shower Friday, high 52. I'm staff meteorologist Jim Manali, and for more information, visit my1071thepoint.com.
The area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry.
Online at westplainspawn.com.
Top of the line, new and used optics from Nikon, Leopold, Burris, Redfield, Zeiss, and Schmidt & Bender. Ask about their selection of binoculars, laser sights, and night vision goggles. With new arrivals every week, the area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry, 1713 West U.S. Highway 160, or shop online at westplainspawn.com.
All right, we're back. I received a call, by the way, that Ms. Wildcraft was unable to call in this morning. She's had some kind of a personal event, and I'm not quite sure what the issue is, and it's really not important. What is important is that we will reschedule to have her back on again. And so I apologize for not having the ability to have her on for you this morning. We will reschedule that, and we'll certainly let you know. Okay, I want to go back to our financial evaluation here, because it is so critically important that we understand the nature and the true depth of trouble that we are in. Now, we're referencing the fact of how many workers there are to cover these debts and how much money is actually owed. You know, I mentioned to you that we have roughly $200 trillion out there in these are the credit default swaps and derivatives and things like that. Well, that is the visible part. The invisible part is made up of a combination of other types of investment vehicles that are similarly toxic in terms of their value. In other words, they have no real value. They are really just monopoly money being traded around. And every time they're sold or transacted, they actually lose value. And that actual amount is $625 trillion. That's right. $625 trillion. So take the 625 and the unfunded liabilities of 123, and that's $750 trillion. Then you take the other 6, and, I mean, here we go. I mean, forget everything above 750 trillion because, I mean, people, really. When our total net asset value is only 93 trillion, you can do the math. We owe more than 7 times what our national net worth is. I mean, come on. We owe 7 times our national net worth. How can you justify sustainability with those kinds of numbers?
You can't.
Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show.
Yes, Michael. I got to admit the Cyprus thing didn't bother me too much, but after the follow-up with the Italy and Portugal and Spain, that bothers me a little. It bothers me a lot. And
well, it should. It should scare the living pants off of every American who has money in a bank.
It does, because it's right next to the total system collapse.
Right. I mean,
so close that there's no subtle difference at all.
We'll do the math. We only...
I can. There's no way we could pay that.
We only produce...
for the next 100 years and never pay it.
Next 100? Thousands. Because we only produce $15 trillion in gross domestic product a year. So when you take $15 trillion and you divide $750 trillion by that number, and that's assuming that we don't keep any of the money. We give 100% of everything that we produce as a nation towards the paying of the debt.
So what should we do? Just declare bankruptcy?
Well, we should do what Iceland did.
And start again?
We might do what Iceland did, and that was to declare the debt engendered by those who didn't truly represent us. Do something called debt repudiation. What repudiation says is, we're not paying it. We didn't create it. We're not responsible for it. Have a nice day. We're not going to pay it. And write it off. Let them write it off.
I like that idea, actually. However, we're much bigger than Iceland. If we do that, the world will fall into economic chaos.
It's going to fall anyway. The only question is whether or not it happens under our terms or the terms of the Federal Reserve and the reserve banks of the world.
Okay, I understand that. Guide the disaster. Yeah.
I mean, here's the point. We're steering the ship, or at least in theory we are, and now the question becomes, do we hit the iceberg head on, or do we just try to shear the edge of it? I mean, I'm not saying that the ship won't sink either way. It probably will. But the question is, if we hit the thing head on, we don't even have time to get to the life rafts. At least if we just shear the edge and slice open the side of the ship, we can shut the containment doors and hopefully some people will survive it. And that is the simple reality of money. Our nation, not to mention our entire planet, is so indebted that there is absolutely no way that we can at any point in time ever be able to recover and cover the debts that are out there. I mean, they're too significant, they're too large, it's impossible. So, and here you have to understand something, too. The Federal Reserve operates exclusively and completely in secrecy. We have no idea what they do. We have no idea. They only tell us what they want us to know. And with that method of operation, they're not accountable to us. When Congress gets them in front of a hearing and says, well, let us understand how you're operating, they say, quite frankly, that's not your business, ma'am. Excuse me? You're setting monetary policy for an entire nation with a $16 trillion domestic product, and you tell us it's none of our damn business? You're printing the money, you're creating international treaties, and it's none of our business? You're creating treaties that we're obliged and guaranteed to adhere to. You're floating debt that we are obliged to pay for, and it's none of our business? Quite frankly, the solution here should be to disband the Federal Reserve. And I get it. This is going to be painful any way you approach it. The question is that do we guide the explosion and try to direct it away from the general population, or do we just allow it to happen and basically put our head between our legs and kiss our butt goodbye?
It sounds like we're going to ride the dragon.
We are going to ride the dragon. The question is, are we going to be on the tail, which is flailing around with an enormous amount of inertia on it, or are we going to be sitting up on his shoulders where at least maybe we have a chance? I mean, we're in trouble, folk.
What was that Patrick Henry said? We'll all hang together, we'll all hang separately.
Yeah. But assuredly, we're all going to hang. The question is, how and under what circumstances? You have to realize something here. The goal and the design of all of this is not something that's just happenstance. All of this, there's a focal point and a design and a plan behind it. And essentially, this is it. When the world's currencies implode, and they will, because it's being designed to do that, the only people who will be in charge of value will be those banks who have, for all intents and purposes, absolute control over all money. The immediate emergency crisis that will be announced will be all global currencies have failed. We're going to go to a single currency, and we're going to redenominate everything. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will be your new world order.
I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to go buy some more beans and rice.
All right, sir. You can do that through our co-op.
Yes, I do know that.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Thanks. Folks, we are looking at a stark picture that I don't think most Americans even grasp. I mean, really, I don't think most people understand exactly how deep we are into this. The numbers are just, I mean, if you were to show these numbers to a banker and explain to him that you needed a loan, he would laugh you out of his office. He would tell you that your situation is hopeless. What you have to realize is that our situation, economically, financially, is truly hopeless. I'm not saying that because I'm a fearmonger. I'm not saying that because I'm some conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying that because I'm wearing a tinfoil hat. I'm saying that because that is the truth. There is logic and there is reason, and everything else is BS. Logic and reason dictate. Logically, the numbers are what they are. Math does not lie. Reason dictates that we could toil away like Egyptian slaves building the pyramids for the next 10,000 years and never wean away this debt. That's the simple truth of it. Anyone who tells you different is a liar. That's the truth. The next step in the process of logical reason will say, where do we go from here? And the result is, this will implode. The only question is, when and under whose direction or tutelage? What phoenix will arise from these ashes? When we come back, we're going to talk about that.
The further we reach out, the closer we all become. Hey, it's Nate Cooper here with the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1 The Point. I invite you to join us Sunday mornings. The program is a combination of local and national known speakers. So I encourage you to do two things. Listen in on Sunday mornings from 8 until noon and find out how you can become a sponsor of one of the programs. Just call our offices at 255-0427. Beyond the Point, Sundays on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1.
I know what you're thinking, Bunk. You're thinking, did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
Dirty Harry gets all his ammo from the battery station. John Rambo, you guessed it. He gets his ammo from the battery station, too. So if you need ammo, go to the place where the guys who know about ammunition go, the battery station. They have one of the largest supplies of ammunition in the area. So make sure you're stocked up and don't get low on shells. Go to the battery station at 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains.
There's one man on this earth who really, truly gets it.
The Democrat Party is not the Democrat Party of 40, 50, 60 years ago. The Democrat Party is a radical left party, populated at the top by 1960s retreads and other sorts of radicals, miscreants, and malcontents, many of whom aren't from the 1960s, but they might as well be, including the president himself.
Weeknights from 5 till 8, Mark Levin on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1.
America's Voice Now, delivering truth over mainstream propaganda every single day. Hi, my name is Michael Evans, and I'm your host, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., and Saturday morning from 6 to 9 a.m. Join me daily for important guests and my unique slant on hot topics in the news. Visit americasvoicenow.org for even more news, articles, and commentary, and watch our show streaming live to your PC. Share your morning with me. Get educated, informed, motivated, and activated. America's Voice Now, right here on 107.1. So the only question here, is what phoenix rises from the ashes? Well, I can tell you what the government's plan is. They're gearing up for it right now. Why do you think DHS has bought 2 billion rounds of ammunition? Why do you think that they are turning military bases into internment camps? Because there will be a certain percentage of the population that will reject whatever plan they come up with. And rightly so. I mean, why would you accept a plan by the same people to salvage that which they have just gotten you into? Well, most of America does. And the proof of it is in the pudding. We've got a Congress full of individuals who, for the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years, have been driving this ship forward. We are now inches away from the iceberg, and they're telling us we have a plan to save you. Well, if you had a plan to save us, you would have been paying attention, and you would not have pointed the ship at the iceberg in the first place. Well, maybe they just didn't mean to, you say. I'm sorry. Are you really that naive? I mean, the watchmen on the decks have been clamoring for decades. Iceberg ahead! Iceberg ahead! Iceberg's dead ahead! Icebergs! Icebergs! Captain! Look! For decades. Are you trying to tell me they're not aware? Have they merely been asleep at the job? Oh, no. They're wide awake. We've been pummeling them with coffee and donuts and all manner of goodies to keep them awake and aware. The real question is, do they care? Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
You're doing a great job. Hit the nail right on the head with everything.
Well, thank you.
What's needed is a good legal argument of why we don't really owe all of this debt. And to my thinking, if somebody cons you into giving them $1 million for the Golden Gate Bridge, would you actually own it?
No, you wouldn't.
Right. And if you were conned into signing a deed to your property and you got no real value for it, would you be obliged to turn over the property in a con?
No, you wouldn't.
And our real government is the Constitution, and everything that they have done that is unconstitutional is a fraud. They have conned us for years, and they have done things that were illegal. And so,
well, you're actually correct, but let me just bring out the reality of the point. And I don't disagree with what you're saying. You're absolutely correct. If I fraudulently trick you into giving me money for land which I don't own, you can't go to the owner and say, well, you got to turn over title to that property to me because I bought it. And the owner says, well, you may have bought it, but you didn't buy it from me. And since I own the deed, caveat emptor, buyer beware. Right? Here's the real problem. The only court that's going to recognize that argument is the court of American citizens.
That's all we really need.
There will be no world court that will recognize that. There will be no judicial system in the United States of America that will recognize that. There will be no Supreme Court, no lower courts. There will be nothing that will recognize that argument except the individual.
Part of the fraud.
What?
The courts are part of the fraud.
Well, of course they are. Of course they are.
We just offer to turn over all of the con men to the world at large to be their slaves to pay off the debt.
Well, listen, I mean, that's like you going to the bank and saying, I'm going to give you my 5-year-old and he's going to pay off the mortgage with the pennies he collects off the street. I mean, it's ridiculous. The simple truth is this. There's no way that we have, the constitutional authority to do that either, okay? And remember something, that it's our obligation to follow the same Constitution we expect them to follow, okay? So I know that's an emotional response of, let's get a hold of these guys and tear them limb from limb and feed them to the dogs. But the truth of the matter is you can't do that, and we can't do that because we do have the moral high ground here, and we just need to stand upon it. What we need to do as a nation, and what will probably not occur until it's too late, is for Americans to recognize that we don't have to allow a government which is operating in an actual state of treason to continue to run our lives.
Right. We've got to put an end to what they're doing. And
well, the only way that that's going to happen is two things. One is if there is an absolute meltdown and Americans across the board recognize that all of this utopian fantasy we've been living in ceases to exist.
Absolutely.
And we begin to recognize that the only way that this can be put back together, that Humpty Dumpty can be restored or revived, is by making sure that anyone who has been involved in government is never allowed in government again. The only problem that you're going to have with that is that all the king's horses and all the king's men are going to be standing between you and Humpty with loaded weapons.
And that is another argument there.
And I'm going to tell you right now that is not going to be pretty.
Right.
These guys are gearing up, and they're gearing up to suppress a grassroots American revolution, if you will. And I don't mean in a violent sense, although they'll be violent. I'm talking about citizens saying, I'm just not going to do it anymore.
Right.
And then they're going to make you do it at the point of a gun.
Yeah, that's coming.
I guarantee you that's coming. I don't know when. I don't know what the trigger is going to be. I can only tell you what you know, and I know, and everyone else knows in the back of their mind. Now, there are the vast majority out there who are unwilling to accept what they already know to be happening. You know, it's like standing there on the side of the street. You're walking down a dark road, and it's a city street, and you see 10 youths approaching you on the other side of the street. And they're carousing, and they're having fun, and they're playing around and joking around, but there's a sinister undertone to it. And the alarm bells are racking in your brain, going off left and right. And you, in fear, continue to walk in the hope that they won't see me, and you continue to whistle past the graveyard, so to speak. And as you get closer and closer and closer, you notice that they begin to recognize and notice you. And they cross the street. And you are standing there in abject fear and terror and paralysis, praying, hoping against hope they don't see you and aren't going to do some damage to you. And you can stand there and pretend that you really are not there. But it's not going to change the outcome of this event.
Right.
And at some point, someone is going to punch you or pull a knife or drag or rip your clothes off or whatever their intended violation of you is going to be.
Right.
So, where do we stand? Well, a conscious, well-adjusted individual who is cognizant of their circumstances would, number one, have the wherewithal to at least be able to fight back, and secondly, would begin to start looking for a weapon with which to do that.
Absolutely.
And they would go out and they would look and find a piece of pipe laying on the ground or a rock or something which they could pick up. And the truly cognizant would already have a weapon in their pocket. And before the youths got to the middle of the street, they would pull that weapon out, point to them and say, "Today ain't your day, fellas." Now, everybody turn around and begin to walk the other way. And anyone who doesn't want to walk the other way, step forward and be the first to go.
Mm-hmm. That's competence.
Well, unfortunately, America is the sheep that will continue to walk down the street, praying, wishing, hoping that they're not spotted.
There's a phrase, violence is the last resort of the incompetent. And competency is just what you described, having that weapon to protect yourself with. And knowing that someday you're going to have to use it, and you're prepared and trained to use it. And that's competency. And the incompetent either have failed to recognize the potential of needing it,
all right,
or have failed to recognize that this is the time you need to use it.
We've got to run. I thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are wrapping our show for the day. Please feel free to listen tomorrow. We are going to, I will reschedule the Marjorie Wildcraft interview. I apologize. I'm not quite sure when we'll reschedule that date, but I assure you that we will have that rescheduled. So I want to thank you for joining with us this morning. You can certainly find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. You can also find us at Facebook on facebook.com/America's Voice Now. You can also see this and every other show that we do on YouTube at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. I look forward to your emails at mike@americasvoicenow.org. Have a great day.
Ladies and gentlemen,
this is KBMB Birch Tree is the Ozarks best news talk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Fox News Radio, I'm Dave Anthony. They say it's about
loving couples having the freedom to marry.